It started as just another evening at the cafe on Elm Street, soft jazz playing through an old speaker, the scent of cinnamon drifting from the kitchen, and a gentle rain tapping on the glass like a quiet rhythm from a distant memory. Lila adjusted her apron for the third time that shift, brushing a stray hair from her cheek as she placed 2 clean mugs back on the shelf. She had worked here for 3 years, and somehow, the place had started to feel more like a waiting room between who she used to be and whoever she was trying to become. She wasn't expecting anything different that night. No sparks, no fate, no poetry, just the clinking of plates and the same regulars mumbling into their coffee. But fate has a way of slipping in through the cracks of the ordinary. The bell above the door jingled. She looked up. And there he was. A man in a charcoal suit, soaked from the rain, standing still like he didn't belong in this quiet little place. He looked too clean for the coffee-stained tiles and too lost to be in control. Their eyes met briefly, and something in her chest stuttered. Not recognition. Not attraction. Just, something. Hot coffee, she offered, her voice gentler than usual. He nodded, his movements slow, almost cautious. He chose the farthest booth from the window, where the shadows swallowed half his face. She brought the coffee, placed it down without a word, and was about to turn away when he spoke. You ever look at someone and feel like you were supposed to meet them? She paused, caught off guard. Not really, she lied. But the truth was, she had. Once. Years ago. He chuckled lightly, as if embarrassed. Sorry. That was strange. I've had a long day. She didn't press. She just nodded and walked back to the counter, but the moment had already shifted something inside her. She kept glancing over at him, his hands, his jawline, the way he held the mug like it was the only thing grounding him. There was pain there. Deep, quiet, well-dressed pain. Hours later, after the crowd thinned and the rain stopped, he stood up, dropped a generous tip on the table, and walked out. No name. No goodbye. Just a lingering glance before the door closed behind him. And Lila didn't expect to see him again. Until 6 weeks later. She was running late for her interview, flustered, nervous, clutching her folder like a shield, when she stepped into the marble lobby of Caraway Industries. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she checked in with the receptionist. It was a long shot, she knew. Assistant to the CEO. Hundreds probably applied. But she needed a fresh start. She needed something steady. And she needed to stop thinking about a stranger in a booth who'd once asked her about fate. When they called her name, she stood up quickly and followed the HR assistant down the long corridor toward the executive office. Her palms were sweating. Her thoughts racing. She rehearsed answers in her head. Until the door opened. And there he was. The man from the diner. Dry. Confident. Impeccably dressed. Sitting behind a mahogany desk, reading over her resume with furrowed brows. Their eyes met again. His didn't widen in recognition, but hers did. Her heart skipped a beat. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. He glanced up, offered a polite smile, and said, Lila Anderson. Please, have a seat. He didn't remember her. But she would never forget that night. Lila sat across from him, her back straight, fingers intertwined in her lap, pretending to be calm while her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She watched him scan through her resume with an expression that was all business, efficient, sharp, and unreadable. The man from that rainy night, the stranger who once seemed lost in a booth, was now her potential employer. And he didn't even know. Your references are solid, he said, setting the papers down. You've worked consistently in administration, customer service, even managed scheduling at that bookstore on 5th. That shows discipline. She nodded, unsure if her voice would betray the swirl of emotions in her chest. Thank you, Mr. Caraway. Lucas, he corrected, almost absent-mindedly, as if he didn't like the weight of the title. I prefer Lucas. That name. It didn't match the man she remembered from the diner. Back then, he was just a shadow, a stranger with a wounded gaze. This version of him, Lucas Carraway, felt like stone. He leaned back slightly, studying her. Why are you applying for this job, Lila? She hesitated. I need a change, she answered truthfully. And I'm good at what I do. I keep things running. Quietly. Efficiently. Lucas tilted his head, still watching her. There was a long pause, like he was waiting for something else, something more. But she didn't say it. She couldn't. That night, they both had reasons for silence. I think you're hired, he said at last. Trial period. 2 months. Lila blinked. Just like that. You didn't waste my time with fluff. You didn't pitch yourself like a sales rep, I value that. He stood, extended his hand. Welcome aboard. And just like that, Lila entered a world far removed from coffee mugs and quiet booths. A world of boardrooms and conference calls, of carefully curated emails and office hours that bled into the night. She kept her distance, professionally. Lucas wasn't unkind, just distant. Focused. He never asked her about her past, and she never brought up the diner. But sometimes, when he passed her desk after a long day, their eyes would meet for a second too long. Like a ghost had brushed by them both. Then, one Thursday evening, everything shifted. Lila stayed late to finish organizing an event schedule. The office had emptied, and the quiet was comforting. She liked being alone, it was easier not to feel. She was walking past Lucas's office when she heard something. A voice. Soft. Childlike. She stopped. Inside, the door was slightly ajar. Lucas sat on the floor, legs crossed, next to a little girl, no older than 6. She had the same dark hair. The same eyes. She was drawing on a piece of paper with a pink crayon, humming a tune Lila couldn't place. Lucas looked different. Softer. Tired. Like someone who had forgotten how to breathe and only remembered how when he looked at her. Lila didn't mean to stare, but she couldn't move. The girl giggled, lifted the picture to show him. Look, Daddy. It's you and Mommy. Lucas froze. His voice, when it came, was quieter than she'd ever heard. You remember Mommy? The girl nodded solemnly. Only in my dreams. Lila stepped back, heart stinging from a pain she couldn't explain. She had no right to listen, no right to feel. But there was something in that little girl's face, something that didn't quite let go. She returned to her desk, barely able to focus. Moments later, Lucas emerged, the girl in his arms, fast asleep against his chest. Their eyes met again. This time, he didn't look away. The next day, Lila kept her head down. She avoided eye contact. She didn't ask about the girl. And Lucas, as expected, said nothing. But something had shifted between them, like a thread had been pulled loose in a tightly woven fabric. Later that week, Lucas asked her to stay after hours to help prepare for an investor presentation. They worked in silence, side by side. The fluorescent lights buzzed above them as she arranged folders, straightened the slides, checked the cables. He broke the silence first. That day you applied, he began, eyes focused on the laptop screen, I thought your face looked familiar. She didn't answer. He glanced at her, and his voice dropped. Do you remember the diner? Her fingers froze above the keyboard. He had remembered. Lila met his gaze, heart pounding. I wasn't sure you did. I didn't, he admitted. Not until recently. Something about the way you looked at my daughter. Like you already knew her. Lila inhaled sharply. I didn't mean to intrude. I just. She likes you, he said, cutting her off gently. A lot. She said you remind her of the woman in her dreams. Lila felt the floor tilt beneath her. Lucas, I. But before she could finish, he reached into his jacket and pulled out something small, worn at the edges. A photograph. He placed it gently on the table between them. Her breath caught. It was from that night, 10 years ago. The only photo they'd taken together. Her in a hoodie, him in a diner booth, the faintest ghost of a smile on his face. The timestamp was faded, but the memory burned vividly. I found it last month while cleaning out old files, he said. At first I thought it was a mistake. A random photo. Then I realized, it wasn't. Lila's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. I didn't think you'd remember. You looked lost that night. I was, he said quietly. I just walked away from my family business. I was done. Exhausted. I didn't want to be anyone's legacy anymore. She finally spoke the words she'd been holding in. You never gave me your real name. He nodded. I didn't expect to see you again. Lila swallowed hard. I found out I was pregnant a month later. The silence between them was thick, humming with everything unsaid. Lucas stood, slowly. Is she mine? Lila's voice trembled. Yes. He closed his eyes. And in that one motion, something inside him broke. I don't know what to say, he murmured. All this time, she was right there. She's your daughter, Lucas, Lila whispered. And she's wonderful. He turned to her, eyes red but clear. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, she said. But by the time I found the company you worked for, you'd vanished. No one would tell me where you'd gone. And then, I was alone. I just raised her the best I could. Lucas sat down again, this time closer. His hand trembled as he reached for the photograph. I missed everything. Her first steps. Her first words. You still have time, Lila said gently. He looked at her then, not with the eyes of a CEO, or a stranger, but with the eyes of a man standing at the edge of a miracle he never expected. And just as he opened his mouth to speak, the door to the office creaked open. Mom. A small voice. They both turned. There she stood, Mia. In her pajamas, a stuffed animal in her arms, blinking sleepily. Lucas stared at her like seeing her for the first time. She looked at him, then at her mother, confused. Why are you crying? Neither of them answered. Instead, Lucas knelt down in front of her. Hey, he said softly, I'm someone very lucky to meet you. Mia tilted her head. Are you my mom's friend? Lila opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes met Lucas's. He smiled gently. I hope so. The next morning was quiet. Lucas sat on the park bench just outside the apartment building, a paper cup of coffee cooling in his hands. The city moved around him, horns blaring, dogs barking, children laughing, but inside him, everything was still. Lila stepped out, holding Mia's backpack. She was dressed in her usual work clothes, but today, something was softer about her, her expression, her step, the way her eyes lingered when they found his. She's ready for school, she said, handing him the bag. He nodded. May I walk her today? She hesitated. Then nodded, too. Mia skipped out moments later, her hair tied in uneven braids Lila had tried to fix twice. She ran up to Lucas, who bent to her level with a shy, proud smile. Do you want to walk with me? He asked. She looked up at her mom, who gave the faintest nod. Mia beamed. Okay. As the two walked down the street, hand in small hand, Lila stood at the door, watching them. She wasn't sure what she was feeling. Relief? Grief? Hope? Maybe all three. Lucas returned later that evening. He didn't have to. There was no promise between them. But he showed up, with 2 cups of takeout coffee and a bag of Mia's favorite snacks. They talked quietly at the kitchen counter while Mia doodled hearts and stick figures on the floor nearby. "I didn't come back to complicate your life," Lucas said finally. "I came back because I want to be in it. If you'll let me." Lila didn't answer right away. She stared at her hands, at the lines time had etched into them, at the invisible weight she had carried for years. Then she looked at him. "I don't need a savior," she said. "I just want someone who shows up." He smiled, quietly. "I can do that." The days that followed weren't perfect. They never are, not in real life. There were awkward silences, moments of hesitation, small stumbles and bigger fears. But there was also laughter, so much laughter. Mia drew a new picture each night and always included all 3 of them, one tall figure, one with a dress, and one tiny girl with wild curls. It wasn't a fairy tale. But it was real. One night, after Mia had fallen asleep on the couch with a coloring book across her lap, Lucas and Lila sat on the fire escape just outside the window. City lights blinked far below. A breeze moved between them, quiet and gentle. "You know," he said, "I think I fell in love with you before I even knew your name." She turned to him slowly, her face unreadable in the dim light. He didn't expect an answer. But she reached for his hand. And just held it. No promises. No conditions. Just warmth. Just now. Just here. A family, not defined by what had been lost, but by what they were willing to build again. And as the city breathed around them, Lila whispered, barely audible, more to herself than to him. "Maybe, some things are meant to find their way back." And in that moment, he believed her. For the first time in years, he truly did.